Welcome everybody. Thank you for coming along to the Green Women's Declaration webinar. You're going to be witnessing some testimony. I'll be handing over to our chair, Pallavi, in just a minute, but we're just waiting for people to land. So Pallavi, I think we should make a start. We are recording this meeting, and it's my absolute pleasure to have the honour of thanking you for chairing this meeting on behalf of Green Women's Declaration. So I'm just going to very swiftly hand over to you and let you continue with proceedings for the evening. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Zoe. Hello, everyone. A very warm welcome on this rather chilly night. For those of you who don't know me, I'm Pallavi. My full name, Pallavi Devulapalli. I'm the Green Party spokesperson for health, public health and social care. I'm also a councillor in West Norfolk, a district councillor and a parish councillor, trustee for CPRE and a campaigner, long-time environmental campaigner. It's my great pleasure to invite you to this webinar today. Just a little introduction as to why we are where we are today. The Green Women's Declaration for Women's Sex-Based Rights was launched in August 2023 to lobby on behalf of women as a sex and explain why sex-based rights are needed for women and girls. From 155 founding signatures, this petition has now grown to more than 1,250 signatories. But women in the Green Party of England and Wales are still being silenced. Many members are afraid to voice their concerns, and dedicated eco-feminist women are still being suspended. Green Party Women as a group has recently been closed down, resulting in no representation for women as a group within this party. So this raises a few questions, very pertinent questions. Does the Green Party really do politics differently? Why have so many committed eco-feminists been punished by their own seemingly progressive political party? Are women being harmed by this process? Let's explore this and more in this webinar today and hear testimony from 4 women who have been punished by the Green Party's disciplinary processes, and perhaps understand how this is directly damaging the fight for women's rights and the wider fight against climate change, which is of course the reason we're all in the party in the first place. So with this short intro, I'll hand you over to our first speaker, who is Emma. Emma Bateman is 3 times co-chair of Green Party Women and was recently reinstated to the Green Party after a 6-month expulsion.
Yeah.
And you, Emma, thank you very much.
Thanks,
just while I've got the microphone, could I please request people who are not speaking to actually take their videos off while the talks are going on, just to save bandwidth, because not everyone has a brilliant bandwidth, so it just helps us. Thank you. Thank you, Emma.
Thanks, Pallavi. So I'm speaking this evening because from where I'm sitting, it looks like gender critical women are being penalised as troublemakers in the party and individually picked off. You can see there's 4 of us here speaking. It's happened to all 4 of us. The way that suspensions work is that they can make you feel isolated. And so coming together in recognition that this is happening to all of us is important. And I think that we are all very well aware that when women encounter the public shaming tactics that all 4 of us have faced, there is an expectation that we will become subdued and withdraw, because those shaming tactics are very effective, being called bigots, TERFs, and, publicly being discussed as being suspended, and it is not very nice. I do want to speak out, but I'm very aware that I have an ongoing legal case against the party and that the lawyers will be listening in for slips and trips. So I've had to grapple with what to reveal to people about the way I have been treated. I also know that there will be people who will want to suggest that even taking part in this event is against the code of conduct, because it does seem like the first rule of Complaints Club is that you don't talk about complaints. There is a fog of confidentiality that hangs over much of what goes on in the party, and figuring the rules of what can and cannot be said is pretty tricky. So here's a brief history. In 2021, I was co-chair of Green Party Women, and I was put on a no-fault suspension in March 2021 on International Women's Day. the day after conference ended. I was supposed to be suspended before conference, but the complaints manager was not there that day, so couldn't inform me. So in July 2021, I sent in extracts from the Forstater judgment to the Green Party Regional Council, which is the body responsible for imposing no-fault suspensions and for party well-being. And I suggested that the party might want to look again at the grounds on which they had suspended me. In light of Forstater, a few weeks later, they lifted the no-fault suspension, but told me they would reinstate it if they became aware of any behaviour by me that created a risk to an individual, group, or the party, although the risk is never specified. And I'm still not quite sure what risk I actually posed to the party. So I spent from March till August in 2021 out of the party for a complaint that has still not yet been heard. I was re-elected in January 2022 as co-chair of Green Party Women. We had our first meeting on February the 3rd, and I was suspended on February the 4th with 3 no-fault suspensions and another 5 complaints in rapid succession. For the first 3 of these complaints, disciplinary committee imposed what amounted to a year-long suspension and 6 months bar from office. I appealed against all 3 of those complaints, and the tariffs were all reduced at those appeal hearings, and the overall result was that the suspensions ended in August 2022, and I was then barred from standing for office till around the end of October. I do not believe that it was a coincidence that the bar from office was long enough to prevent me from standing for positions at the Green Party Autumn Conference and, in theory, for Green Party Women. So that year in 2022, I spent from March until August out of the party. Now, 2 of the complaints against me were submitted by members of the former leadership team. And I think it's important to understand that while the Green Party likes to think it's a grassroots organisation, the way that gender critical members have been treated is enthusiastically encouraged from the top brass, with the notable exception of Jenny Jones, who herself has been accused of turfery. In one of those cases by a former leadership team member, the disciplinary committee gave me 1 year suspension and 6 months bar from office, but this person wanted me expelled, so they appealed to try and get a harsher sentence. They claimed they had new evidence for the appeal. It transpired that this was an accusation that I had made a child cry at a Green Party conference and that I was therefore some kind of safeguarding risk to children. I know I have a reputation for evil turfery, but I will state categorically that I did not knowingly make a child cry at any Green Party conference. In January 2023, I was expelled due to a complaint by another former member of the leadership team and a Green Party councillor. This complaint went through several committees, and it took 11 months from the first hearing to the appeal outcome. One reason it took so long is because during the course of the first hearing, there was an outburst from one of the disciplinary panel while I was making my defence that he was sick of this shite, a sentiment for which I have some sympathy. In addition, it turned out that the former leadership member brought the complaint to try to prevent me from going to the Green Party conference, where I was due to propose a motion on ensuring sex and gender are not conflated when gathering data. Bringing a complaint in order to harass, annoy or subdue somebody, which I think can be argued preventing them from going to conference comes under, is covered by the guidance on unreasonable, persistent, abusive, malicious and vexatious complaints, and it is supposed to be behaviour that is not acceptable. So this complaint went back to the disciplinary committee, where I was expelled again, then back to appeals, who sent it back to the disputes complaints referral group for consideration on whether it was vexatious. A short while after delivering their opinion, 2 of the appeals committee resigned. I do not think the timing was purely coincidental. Now, the disputes complaints referral group decided the complaint was unreasonable, but then they sent it back to the appeals committee anyway, rather than dismiss it, which I believe is a first. By this time, I was told that the lawyers were going to be consulted too, and that was all done by early September, but it took till mid-November for a new appeals committee to make the decision to unexpel me, but to bar me from office for 18 months. I have to say that I think that if it were not for the legal advice, the new appeals committee would have cheerfully stuck to the original disciplinary committee decision to expel me. Now, the reason I've detailed that last complaint is to highlight the time and effort and resources that are being put into these complaints. For my own part, I had to respond to the 4 different hearings, and it's very disheartening to have to write defences outlining why I think I'm not a transphobic, bigoted right-wing TERF. These complaints and procedures are draining energy and goodwill from the party. So with all this time and effort that went into hearing this complaint, I must have said something truly reprehensible. Actually, that is the word that the last appeals committee used, so they do believe that my words are reprehensible. So what did I say that warranted all of this bustle? Now, I have had to think about revealing that, because I have already been expelled twice for writing the heinous words. So I'm not sure if revealing them here will start that merry-go-round again, and I will find myself sliding down a snake back into exactly the same complaint as first time around. However, all of the evidence relied on were tweets, and I've not been asked to delete any of those tweets, so they are all still on my Twitter feed. And I figure they are already out in the public domain anyway, for Green Party members to get all hot and bothered about all over again, which does seem to be some members' way of cutting down on heating bills. So I'm going to share my reprehensible words, though I am redacting names of those I interacted with to avoid any comeback on them. So I'll just share my screen and you will see what it was that I said. I'm going to zoom in a bit and move it around. So the first one is just my profile. It was decided that was wrong to have that profile up there because it says Green Party and I'm recognisable as a Green Party member. Second one is I said the only power I have is to state the truth on Twitter. People cannot change sex. Males cannot become females. Identifying as is not the same as being. Though you are right that the truth is powerful and it can be painful to those who don't want to hear it. Okay, most of these, all of these tweets are while I was in conversation with people over this issue. And to me, you know, conversation is quite important. So the next one is I challenged someone on Twitter who was a member of the LGBT Greens committee because the LGBT Greens had called my motion on sex and gender. They'd called it, I think they called it dangerous, counter to Green values, and advised people not to vote for it, which I thought was a bit rich that they sent that out to members. So I just asked that person, I said, you like to tweet which your guide points out some dangerously deceptive motions to be aware of. Do you include my motion in that list or not? And that was thought to be unreasonable that I asked that question. I can't see all these. The next one, there are women in the Green Party standing up for women's rights, sadly not among the leadership who repeat the trans women are women mantra. Can't quite read all of this. So, yeah, I can minimise that. Wait a second. I am also the co-chair of Green Party Women. Sex is real. Biology matters. People cannot change sex. The answer to the Staniland question is no. If people don't know what the Staniland question is, I don't have the phrasing exactly, but I'm sure somebody else will get it exact. But it is along the lines of, should my 11-year-old daughter be able to get changed in the changing room without seeing a male penis? That is the question, and that is thought to be quite a transphobic question by some people. Okay, so the reason why I was pulled up on that is because I said people cannot change sex, and that was apparently against the code of conduct. The other one, I think it's pretty disrespectful to women to allow male sex offenders to call themselves women and for their crimes to be recorded as being committed by females. It also distorts the data, making it unreliable. And then I asked this person I was in conversation with, what is your easy solution? Again, I think that was found to be against the code of conduct and disrespectful to male sex offenders, I think. I'm not entirely sure. Because I had 4 different hearings that all looked at the same set of tweets and different responses from each of those hearings, I get a bit confused as to what ones were actually found to be against the code of conduct and which ones weren't, because it changed at different times. The next one, someone was asking me if I was happy to call something with a back and 4 legs a chair. This is supposed to be a gotcha, because they'll then put up a picture of a horse and say, haha, you think it's a chair. And then I asked the question, are you happy to call, and I've redacted their name. This is a male person. Are you quite happy to call so-and-so female? Because you seem to be skirting around that one. What is a female? That was one of the ones I think that was called reprehensible. So I'll quickly skirt through the rest of them. So then another one, I acknowledge that is Green Party policy. That's trans women are women. And that as co-chair of Green Party Women, I must always state party policy. But yes, I disagree with it. Trans women can identify as women. It does not make them adult human females, as name redacted suggests. Again, that was considered, I think that was considered reprehensible. Not entirely sure. I said, I'm entrenched in the view that biological sex is real, and that regardless of how they choose to identify, people cannot change sex. I'm perfectly willing to change my view when you show me evidence of the 3rd gamete or an adult human male actually gives birth. And then quickly, because I'm looking at the time, again in conversation, I would love to know the answer to that question. I can't quite remember what the question was, because it seems to be the one that most trans activists shy away from. Genuinely, what is the objective difference between a man and a trans woman? And again, you know, that was found to be against the code of conduct, I think, because I'm suggesting there's a difference, or that somehow, I think it was because these rhetorical questions are not serious questions, but in fact they are serious questions, because I was seriously asking that question. The other ones are quite interesting, because the other ones are all evidence that I've brought the party into disrepute. And these are 5 tweets by other people that are basically calling me a transphobe. And it was thought enough to bring the evidence to show random people on the internet calling me a transphobe to prove that I was bringing the party into disrepute. So it doesn't really take a lot. Right, I'm going to stop screen sharing, and I think that's probably my 10 minutes. So I'm sorry if I've overrun slightly, and I will say some more about this in questions if anyone's got any questions about it. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Emma. Thank you for that. Well, I don't even know what to call it. Yeah, tale, I guess. Okay. Actually, it's quite a loss not being able to see people. I hope for the Q&A we can try having videos on, because I think it makes a real difference. I don't like talking to a blank screen, actually. Our next speaker, which is my great delight to invite, is Alison Teal. Alison Teal is a former councillor and cabinet member of Sheffield City Council, general election candidate for Sheffield Central 2019, co-chair of the Rights and Responsibilities Policy Working Group, and current general election candidate for Sheffield Central, currently suspended from Green Party of England and Wales since October 2022. Over to you, Alison.
Thank you very much. Because of time constraints, I can only provide a snapshot of the past 13 months, so I'm focusing on the highlights. So I was notified that I was selected by my local party to be the Green Party candidate for Sheffield Central at the next general election on Monday, the 26th of September, 2022. Prior to this, I was asked to keep the morning of Wednesday, the 28th of September, free for the planned press launch if I was chosen as the candidate. The local campaign manager told me on the 27th of September that there was disquiet in the Central Green Party office about my selection. She said that the press release had to be delayed and that Natalie Bennett, who had previously agreed to attend the press launch and introduce the candidate, had refused to attend because it was me. So it would be fair to say that the campaign for Sheffield Central was not off to a flying start. I felt unsure of how to proceed, and I spoke to people I thought I could trust at the time. There was no plan for the campaign or any publicity about my selection locally or by the National Party. I didn't feel comfortable launching the campaign independently, and I was unsure of what resources I could call upon. On the 10th of October, I was shocked to learn that 5 Sheffield Green Party councillors tweeted, "I am a member of Sheffield Green Party and I support trans rights. I will not campaign for any candidate who discriminates against trans people." My first instinct was to write a quote tweet stating, "Neither would I." But I held off and I observed the impact of their actions. I had previously had what I thought were good relationships with the 5 councillors, so I was shocked that they'd chosen to be so publicly hostile towards me. Given that I've never discriminated against trans people, and of course I support trans rights, I was struggling to understand what they were trying to achieve. The consequence of them tweeting this hostile meme is that the first publicity of my selection success came in the form of a bright green article titled, "Green Party members publicly refuse to campaign for Sheffield parliamentary candidate." Wow, what a launch! I offered to meet with the councillors to talk about what they were feeling, but sadly this still hasn't happened. I did meet with the Sheffield executive to discuss possible resolutions on the 17th of October 2022. Afterwards, one exec member emailed me asking me to please stand down for the good of the party. I replied saying, "Okay, so I was the first choice of the 56% of Sheffield members who voted, and you want me to stand down for the good of the party? Do you not think I have a democratic mandate?" And he replied, "It's not about democracy, it's about what is best for the party." So he thought that he knew better than the 56% of members who voted. On the 20th of October 2022, I received an email from the Green Party complaints manager telling me that a Sheffield councillor had submitted a complaint about me based on tweets I'd made, which he alleged were transphobic. He also complained that I'd failed to disclose that I disagreed with a trans-inclusive policy on my nomination form. So on the one hand, he claimed I was publicly transphobic, and on the other hand, he claimed I was not being open about my views on transgender policy on an internal party document. Despite these contradictions, the complainant expressed the view that I should be expelled from the party. His complaint was referred to GPRC, and on the 25th of October, I received an email telling me that I was deemed to be a risk to the reputation of the party and therefore placed on a no-fault suspension pending a disciplinary investigation into my alleged transphobic tweets and my failure to disclose my alleged disagreement with trans-inclusive policy. On the 22nd of November 2022, I submitted my response to the complaint that I'd received on the 20th of October. In my response, I included the fact that I had previously received, in March 21, 2 separate complaints, which were very similar to the October 22 complaint. In fact, many of the same allegedly transphobic tweets were included as evidence in all 3. I queried why the 2 complaints from March 21, despite being so similar to the October 22 complaint, had not been investigated and had certainly not led to a no-fault suspension. Rather than note that there was an inconsistency in the way the complaints against me had been managed, the investigator decided to roll all 3 complaints together. There I was, thinking I'd made a valid point about how in March 21 the complaints were ignored. Then all of a sudden, in October 22, I found myself put on a no-fault suspension for essentially the same complaint, as proven by the fact that the investigator saw fit to roll them together. In March this year, I took the opportunity to have legal representation. My lawyer set to work and responded to the party regarding how the process did appear to be the punishment, and explained that the party was discriminating against me. The party pushed back and said that it was following party process. So my lawyer replied saying, "It is correct that this may be an internal matter between the Green Party and Alison Teal, who is a member. However, even with the Green Party being an unincorporated organisation, the disputes and complaints process needs to, 1, to be fair and consistent, 2, to be applied fairly and consistently, and 3, to operate lawfully." On the 3rd of November, following pressure from my solicitor, the party communicated to say that the complaints against me would be investigated during November this year. However, I've heard nothing so far. My lawyer has advised me that now is the time for us to issue proceedings in the High Court and to pursue the Green Party for discrimination. The party's governance bodies have failed to ensure a neutral and fair disciplinary process to protect me and all women from harm. Even if my no-fault suspension is lifted, I've still suffered considerable stress as a result of the discrimination in the system as it stands. GPRC have renewed my suspension 3 times already, and I'm yet to hear of the outcome of their consideration of my suspension at their meeting that was on the weekend. The reasons for my suspension have changed over time. The alleged transphobia is no longer listed as the reason that I present a threat to the reputation of the party. I think this is because the party obtained legal guidance that clarified that my tweets are not transphobic, and therefore they opened themselves up to the possibility of potentially being seen as discriminatory towards me for my protected belief that sex and gender are not the same. GPRC now claim that I'm a danger to the party because I attacked a Labour candidate, Eddie Izzard, on Twitter, which is untrue. I retweeted an article which mentions both me and Eddie Izzard, and I wrote that the article raised concerns that I thought we ought to discuss in Sheffield Green Party. Today, a former GPRC member has stated publicly, and I quote, that "For the brief time I was on GPRC, I observed abuse of position, abuse of process, abuse of power, and discrimination." I don't think I can have any reasonable expectation of the process being fair, because it's clearly targeting women who hold gender-critical beliefs like I do. To give you an idea of the opportunity that's been squandered as a result of my 13 months on suspension, I'd like to read an extract from correspondence that was shared with me today by a supporter who told me that she's resigned because she's outraged about how I'm being treated. And this is what she wrote to Sheffield Green Party. She said, "I was thrilled when Alison came forward as a possible candidate for MP. I've seen her work in many different ways, and I believe that she had a good chance of beating Labour as the Central Labour MP, Paul Blomfield, was stepping down. He had a good majority for the last two elections, but in his first election in 2010, he only got in by a recount of 163 votes. The reason was that he was standing against the then City Council leader, Liberal Democrat Paul Scrivens. This shows that a Liberal Democrat nearly got in on a personal vote and was a strong contender to a traditional Labour candidate. Alison, as a Green, would have got that personal vote similar to Paul Scrivens. In the constituency, she is well known and hugely respected for the many campaigns she's involved in. Also, boundary changes would have been in her favour, as she would have got votes from areas where there are a majority of Green councillors and Labour has lost so much power. So she is well known and respected for her tree protest actions and her challenges to the Labour-controlled council. So I truly believe that the Greens have lost a chance of an MP here. Thank you for listening.
Thank you, Alison. Okay, going to move on to our third speaker of the evening. It's my pleasure to welcome Zoe. Zoe Hatch is the current Green Party Women Co-Chair and Co-Chair of Chiltern Green Party. She was the GP Executive Internal Communications Coordinator from 2021 to 22, General Election Candidate for Beaconsfield 2019, and currently suspended from the Green Party of England and Wales since October 2023. Over to you, Zoe.
Thanks, Pallavi, and thanks to the two previous speakers. It's such an honour to be sharing this platform with all of the women that are speaking this evening. It's quite sobering, really, to hear all these testimonies. I was elected on the 25th of January this year with a majority vote of Green Party women. I stood on a basis of defending sex-based rights. And I was, as I say, I got the majority vote. I've been a Green Party supporter and an environmental and women's rights campaigner since I was old enough to vote, pretty much. I did serve for a while as a Labour Party and parliamentary researcher around the time of the 1997 landslide victory. So I've got form when working in the political field. However, I became a fully fledged member of Green Party in 2015, and I was quickly appointed as party agent and a local candidate. Just going to pause there for 1 second, if I may. Sorry about that. So I ran the Chiltern Green Party general election campaign in 2017. I became local party co-chair. I was also a speaker for a short time for Extinction Rebellion in 2019. I stood in for people like Rupert Reed, speaking at various different events. In the local unitary authority elections in 2021, I was the local party target to win candidate, and we fell short of the win of 100 votes. Prior to that, we had actually, when we first stood previously in 2015, we'd only had 60 votes in that ward. So it's, for me, being involved in the local party has been at least a decade of campaigning now. I think we're going to turn that around and win in the next at the next election. But of course, I won't now be allowed to be a target candidate because I have been put on this no-fault suspension. The reason I'm trying to give you my CV is not just to sort of like just tell you a little bit about my life story, but to say that when these no-fault suspensions happen, they don't just impact the Central Party, they don't just impact the women's group, although I was, co-chair of Green Party Women. It's also severely impacted the local party. I was co-chair of the local party with my colleague who I was actually sort of mentoring to take over the reins there. So there's all the knowledge that I've got of the last decade that has been lost because I've been put on no-fault suspension. The rules mean that I'm not allowed to collaborate with the local party, and the local party aren't allowed to collaborate or talk to me. Similarly for National Party. I have to say that I am so grateful that actually when it comes to it, local friends, local Green friends and colleagues are believe in me and they support me, and I know that that's true of the women within the party who support me as well. I'm very, very grateful to the Green Women's Declaration for giving me a safe haven to collaborate with other women on these important issues. Just want to go and give you a quick overview of what has been the most illuminating experience being a Green Party Women co-chair for this last year. We took up position in February after the election had finished, and things went. There was a willingness to collaborate at the beginning from the 6 members of the committee who had been elected on the basis of a platform for defending sex-based rights, and there were 3 members who ascribed to gender identity theory and were very giving precedent to wanting to defend that particular perspective. So there was already some imbalance and difficulties in the way that the committee was structured. In April, we put forward a tweet talking about wanting to respect the Equality and Human Rights Commission's call for a well-informed and respectful discourse on the subject of sex and gender. It was of great surprise to me that this tweet resulted in a complete volley, an avalanche of complaints against us, formal and informal. They came from the highest level of the party. They came from the Green Party Regional Council having 3 emergency meetings in order to try to get rid of all of the gender critical members of the Green Party. It resulted in them trying to shut down the whole group, and it also resulted in my first complaint against me, which came against me from my co-chair, the woman who had stood on a platform of wanting to raise up gender identity theory. I got a couple of other complaints in at that time. I also got interrogated by the 2 GPRC co-chairs. And there was a kind of ongoing harassment from that point forward, I would say, throughout the whole year, where I, as in my role as Green Party Women co-chair, was scrutinised. There would be moments where I was trying to pull together an agenda for a meeting, and it resulted in a 46 email exchange or more, because people were trying to obstruct just deciding what the points for the agenda for a meeting would be. I was told I couldn't chair my own EGM, but nonetheless, we did proceed with an extraordinary general meeting where we decided in August to hear testimony from women who in the party and men in the party with gender critical beliefs who had been discriminated against. The aim of that meeting was to talk to those members, to collate evidence of discrimination, and then refer that in a dossier to the Equality and Human Rights Commission, which we did. Emma and I went to meet with the Equality and Human Rights Commission CEO in September earlier this year, and we submitted that dossier. In addition, there was an AGM that occurred in that month, and at that point I was publicly humiliated and accused of bullying. And it became very apparent that what was happening in the party is that a narrative of a transphobia smear campaign, which I believe Emma has been subjected to, has now transferred into a narrative of a bullying smear campaign. So my character is being smeared and I'm being called a bully. The reasons that are cited for me now being on a no-fault suspension is because I wrote to all of the Green Party women members, and I talked about the discrimination that we were being experiencing. I talked about the campaign of an intention to close down the Green Party women group. Once I'd written about that and I'd named individuals who'd been involved in that campaign, and I do think that there is evidence to suggest that there was a report that was submitted by an alternative report that was submitted by the Green Party Women co-chair, which actually calls for the Green Party Women group to be shut down. So I wrote to members about that. We've got about 3,500 members of Green Party Women. And it was as a result of writing that email that I was put on my no-fault suspension. And it was because I was told that I was being a bully. But I'd just like to bring something up now, which is just a reminder really of the Green Party's own legal advice. It says that victimisation is treating someone badly because they've done a protected act, or because you believe that a person has done or is going to do a protected act. A protected act in this case is making a claim or complaint of discrimination under the Equality Act. So what I had done essentially through gathering evidence about discrimination, about raising this, bringing this information to the attention of the Equality and Human Rights at the HRC, and by writing to members about this discrimination, I have performed protected acts, and I am now being subject to victimisation and harassment, even by definition of the Green Party's own legal advice. Now, I can, rather than reading out all of these emails and all of this paperwork, it's quite difficult sometimes to try to weave a narrative without giving too much detail, but I will refer you to the GC Green's website, which has got all of the letters, all of the documentation that we're talking about here. Go away and have a look at that, and you can decide for yourselves whether what I've written actually should warrant a no-fault suspension. Remember, the no-fault suspension is a sanction without, we call it a no-fault suspension. I would actually say it's a suspension without investigation, because that is what happens. So now I'm out in the cold. I can't interact or collaborate with any of the other members of the party, and I can't continue my ongoing work within the party now to highlight this discrimination. You'll see on there also reference to the fact that I've also written whistleblowing complaints as early as January this year about this situation, and to my knowledge, the party have done nothing, or at least nothing of any substance, in order to prevent this happening to me. And the last point I'm making, see, Pallavi, you've got your camera back on, I probably have to finish, but I just want to highlight the other point, which is that this is a pattern of behaviour now. I'm the third Green Party women co-chair with gender critical beliefs to be sanctioned in this way. There is a pattern of behaviour and discrimination. It's not about me. When I'm punished, I believe that all women in the party are being punished, because now there is no representation of women within the party, because the whole of the Green Party Women group has been shut down. Thanks.
Thank you, Zoe. That was, powerful. Our final speaker is Dawn Furness. Now, I have to warn you all, Dawn isn't very well. So I think, Dawn, you've been very kind and brave to actually put up with this and still come forward. Thank you. I'll do a brief intro. So Dawn is a former co-chair of Green Party Women from 2019 to 2020, former member of the Green Party Executive, local party support member from 2019 to 21, former member of the International Committee in 2020, 3 times general election candidate for Blythe Valley, MEP candidate for the North East region and campaign manager in 2019, former coordinator of the North East region, former coordinator of Blythe Valley. Wow. Recently reinstated to the Green Party of England and Wales following expulsion and a 2-year suspension. Over to you, Dawn.
Thank you, Pallavi. I'm sorry if I have quite a shaky voice today, but I'm really not feeling very well. So on the 2nd of December 2020, nearly 3 years to the day, I was recalled from my elected position on GPEX. The Green Party Executive is the local party support, a position that I'd won with a nearly 3-1 majority against the incumbent Doug Roxell. I was given no reason for the recall other than my behaviour was beyond the pale. I was not given any documentation of the complaint against me, provided with no evidence or right to reply or any means to challenge the decision that was done by the Green Party Regional Council. 3 months later, when my recall from GPEX had been determined unfounded and unconstitutional, I was not even notified that the party had recalled my recall and that it had been withdrawn, as instead, within a matter of hours, a secondary complaint had been brought by another member and processed against me, and I was immediately suspended from the party. Even though the complaint cited immediate risk to the party, I was given no information as to what this risk was, despite multiple emails requesting further information, which were all ignored, as was my right to reply. Previously, I first incurred the wrath of the gender faction in the party when I was selected to speak at a Women's Place conference in Newcastle in May 2018. As a subsequent of that, I was subject to online harassment and bullying by Adrian Harrop, who was later suspended from medical practice for harassing and abusing women online, as well as multiple members of my own party. I was unaware at the time that I had drawn a target on my back, despite abiding by all protocols to speak at the conference and declaring the official Green Party policy to the ascended attendees. And yet I still received multiple complaints which came through my regional field officer. Therefore, in April 2020, I submitted a 30-page whistleblowing complaint to the party, and in doing so invoked the legal protection for whistleblowers under the UK law. However, amongst the aspects of the Green Party's institutional discrimination that were then included in that whistleblowing complaint included the Green Party policies on how women are defined and treated within the party, which were initially put in place by David and Amy Challoner and were left in place after David Challoner's imprisonment for 22 years following child sexual offences. Green Party officers indicated support for David Challoner after his conviction, and members like myself who challenged those expressions of support were disciplined. I was given a 12-month censure for liking a tweet that was critical of a party officer who was sharing a meme created by David Challoner a week after his conviction. And the person who wrote the tweet was Andy Healy, and he was given a 2-year suspension. The report into the Challoner that involved the party identified serious safeguarding risks, which has still not been addressed 3 years after the fact. When women members in the Green Party, including myself, attempted to pass democratic motions, including the word sex to be included in the policy documents, excuse me, seeking to overturn the policies that the Challoners had brought in, these motions were illegitimately and undemocratically defeated by the party leadership. That women who expressed gender-critical beliefs or were even suspected of holding the beliefs were blacklisted and excluded from the party platforms. That officers made concerted attempts to ensure that women who stood for election to internal roles had their results suppressed in favour of males who had received fewer votes. That women who tried to meet to discuss the role of women in the party had their meetings sabotaged by the party officers to the extent that women had to meet in secret and with police escorts. That the leadership of the Green Party women were denied access to their own membership database for 5 years to prevent women from democratically meeting and organising. that I was physically assaulted twice at conferences in Scarborough and Newport, and that this was reported directly to the officers on duty of the Green Party and the GPRC members who were also on duty. And their reaction was not to call the police as per my request, not to contact the venue security, but was to actually laugh in my face and then several hours later tell me that I could make a complaint against the individual if I wanted, and that they were very sorry that I had had that experience. And yet they themselves did not take any action against the person who had assaulted me, who I had pointed out to them on the floor of the conference. As an unsuccessful parliamentary candidate for the Green Party in 2019, the same male officer in the party cheered and celebrated my loss to the Conservative candidate while watching the result being announced on television, shouting the abusive word TERF at the screen during the party HQ with all members of the lead, excuse me, with many members of the Green Party present, including those who were actually working on the campaign, because this was on the night of the election of the general party, of the general election in 2019. Members, including myself, who expressed gender critical beliefs, were disciplined and suspended, often in processes that took years, denying us any democratic role whilst those processes were ongoing. The Green Party and any organisation can create any policy it deems fit. However, they cannot break the law. The Green Party Disciplinary Committee and the complaints process was developed when the party had only 5,000 members and before it expanded to its current membership of nearly 50,000. And this was designed to resolve disagreements within the party members with the flawed assumption that they were the best were intentioned for the party. It was designed for reasonable people behaving reasonably. It was not designed for entryists and for factions who were wanting to remove members for political ideological reasons. Individual members would attempt to resolve differences in person. If that failed, the complaint would be raised to the local party, if not raised to the regional party, and then finally the national party when all of the avenues had failed. However, on the gender issue, all complaints were mainlined to the national level without prior recognition and interaction with the local party, and this was enabled by the leadership and staff. I have found it brutally difficult to write this statement, and also the litigation documents, as every time I revisit what happened to me within the assaults and the extensive smear campaigns and bullying, it is traumatic. My journey for the Green Party to recognise women as a distinct sex class under UK Equality Act began in April 2018 and will not conclude until at least 2024. That is a 6-year journey for the party to acknowledge that sex is real and material for the lived experience of females. This is an extraordinary position for any party to take. Taking the party to court under the protection of the Legal Equality Act are already protected under the law. It is established case law. The party is breaching the law, and even as of February 2023, ignoring its own legal advice, for which it has paid approximately £100,000. The emotional toll on myself has been devastating. My entire friend structure was disseminated as a consequence of my complaint and removal from the party, and not allowed to contact any members in the party as a consequence of my suspension. And it has subsequently dissolved the entire local party, and now complaints have been raised against my colleagues to again further remove support from my network. In conclusion, rather than the separation of powers, the Green Party has allowed and enabled a power grab of a faction of individuals who have manipulated and abused the complaints process. As a consequence, individual party members have been permitted to stand simultaneously on multiple branches of the governance section, which were designed to be kept separate. At least 2 members currently sit on the Standing Orders Committee and the Green Party Regional Council, with one of those individuals sitting simultaneously on the Appeals Committee. The separation of committees was designed to scrutinise decisions made by the Central Green Party Regional Council, and SOC was established to give information specifically at conference and has undertaken substantial mission creep to become a quasi-judicial judiciary about the interpretation of national policy. Therefore, 1 member currently sits on SOC, GPRC and the disciplinary appeals process, and a special interest group is absolutely outrageous. As a comparison, this would be like a sitting MP proposing legislation, then speaking on behalf of the police to endorse that legislation, and then subsequently adjudicating on that same legislation as a member of the Supreme Court, all as the same person. This is farcical. This is corruption. I know firsthand that this has not been the Green Party policy for allowing members to stand on multiple national governance branches, as I was elected to the International Committee in September 2020 and was then immediately given an ultimatum to stand down or I would be removed from my position on GPEX. This removal, which was currently conveniently enacted by my recall from GPEX in December 2020. The Green Party exists in a bubble of its own ideology. It smears and purges its ranks of many dissenters with diversity of thought on the sex and gender rights issue. Whilst the party may make policy, it does not, whatever it desires, it cannot actively discriminate against members of a protected characteristic under the Equality Act. By the time my case gets to court, the corruption of the party, from the abuse and weaponisation of the complaints process to the fraudulent election of partisan members, will be laid bare in court testimony. Sunlight is the best form of disinfection, but this disclosure will destroy confidence in anyone associated with the party and undermine all environmental campaigners. It is my belief that the Green Party will not change its position with regards to recognising sex, as it is too entrenched, and these individuals would rather see the party destroyed than recognising the human rights of those that understand the biological reality of sex. In 2024, we will be facing a general election, and it is shamefully clear that the Green Party are not fit to govern in any capacity. The party itself is not fit for purpose when its own governance officers are prevented from scrutinising its own papers. The moniker of the nice guys in politics is untrue. The same high-profile members who stand on a platform to call out the most egregious behaviours of the Tories and Labour members, will they themselves be subject to the same scrutiny in court? The Green Party cannot claim to uphold the principles of democracy if at our core we are a corrupt organisation with a lack of transparency of internal processes. Thomas Jefferson said the price of freedom is eternal vigilance, and those members of the party who mistakenly believe the issues currently facing women are a disagreement between two factions rather than the systemic purge of women that have been abused and smears with wrongthink need to become actively involved in the structure of their own party. So I suggest 3 points. Write to your regional council member of GPRC. We have a contact list that we can provide and share information. Stand for a governance position. We need sensible Green Party people in the room to outvote the extremists. And at a time when the organisation of climate activists is most needed, the world is finally waking up to the desperation and impact of the biodiversity collapse of climate change. The Green Party will become bankrupt and will self-implode. This will not be the result of the brave women and men standing up to the oppression and silencing and seeking redress in the courts, but from the narcissism and solipsism of its leadership, CEO and staff members and elected officials who have enabled the discrimination and victimisation of women on the basis of their sex and gender critical beliefs. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. Could I request everyone to put your cameras on now? We'll open the floor to questions and answers. I'm sure you have lots of questions. My head is reeling from hearing all that. I think Sue might have some questions, or shall I just go straight to who I can see on the screen? Because there are so many people here that I can't see everyone.
If you go to some of the submitted questions before, if you don't mind me interjecting, I think that was the play, to go to a couple of the submitted ones if you have them to hand, and then
yeah, sure. Okay. I have one very simple question while we're waiting for me to find my document. Is there a limit to how long someone can be suspended on this so-called no-fault suspension under the party rules? Yeah, go ahead. So
there isn't any stipulated limit, and we know that one individual actually is part of the submission to the EHRC dossier to give testimony that they had been suspended for 2 years without investigation, without any progress. And then when it actually got to the point of the hearing, it was dismissed without basis. So the fact it was found that there was actually no claim against this person. So they'd just been in the wilderness for 2 years, and there again we see that the process is the punishment. It was the process of being put out in the wilderness and no fault suspension, and that's essentially what's happened. Alison's been out for a year. There's no notice of when I might be taken off no fault suspension. I know Emma and Dawn were put on suspension for a really long time as well. I don't think we're taking comment from other members of the floor. Judy, I know you've got your hand up, but I wonder if that's what you wanted to say something about.
Okay, thank you for that, Zoe. Maybe that's something we need to work on, of changing the rules so that there is a limit. There's got to be some time limit, because otherwise it's a farce. Right, I've got some questions that have been submitted beforehand. Let's keep the answers brief, because I'd really like to take some questions from the floor as well. Does anyone have an estimate of how much the court cases will cost the party? Dawn?
The BBC reported that Sharar's case would cost approximately 400,000, and that's one case. So if you multiply that across the 3 cases that are live, and then the potentially 2 cases that are in the pipeline, that's £2 million. So we would be bankrupt. There's no question about it. The party does not have those funds, the finances to challenge that. And also to remind people that the capitations were withheld at conference this year, and we were told that this was because of the cost of living crisis, but some people may recall at conference it was then misspoken that the chair said that it was to do with the cost of equality crisis, and that was, I believe, a reference to the fact that the court cases were being in the pipeline, and that was the reason for the capitations.
Okay. So somebody asked about Alison's suspension. Alison's suspension has effectively stopped our election campaign in Sheffield for 13 months. Has Sheffield Green Party or the local party officer on GPEX been active in Alison's defence?
So it's a bit complicated. The Yorkshire and Humber GPRC rep that I would go to, they're both well known to be pretty extreme in their views. One of them did offer to liaise with me, but unfortunately, it's quite rare for me to have severe disagreements with anybody, actually, but I found it necessary to block this person on social media several years ago, and I don't have communication with them, so I'm in an awkward situation where I can't actually communicate with my GPRC rep because they've proven themselves to be utterly untrustworthy for a long time. And so the answer is that this person did reach out via an intermediary, but I felt that they were so untrustworthy I couldn't actually liaise with them at all.
Pallavi, can I just say something? Sorry, I didn't realise my mic was off before. I wanted to say something of just in relation to the former question about court costs. I just want to stress, right, that me and Dawn are both here. We've both got legal actions against the party. Alison's got a potential legal action against the party. This is not what any of us want, right? We are environmental campaigners, and I've been in the party for a long time. I don't know about other people, but, I joined the Greens to be an environmental campaigner. And if you had told me a few years ago that this is the position I would be in, I would be absolutely gobsmacked. I wouldn't believe it. But I have kind of put up with the treatment since 2019 that I've seen, and I haven't seen it change. And this is the issue. If things are changing, they are changing extremely slowly. And I don't really see the evidence of it when Zoe's just been suspended, when Green Party Women's just been disaffiliated. So if the party doesn't want to have these court costs, it needs to, members need to get a hold of it and stand and make this change, because it's no good just to say that you want to avoid this subject. A lot of local parties want to avoid it. It's no good to say you're going to avoid it. It needs to be faced head on because of what's happening in the Centre Party, as Dawn so eloquently outlined. Thanks.
Thank you, Emma. I noticed someone mentioned Sharar's court case. How will this case help the party? I don't know if Sharar is on this call, if he wants to take it, or Zoe. Yeah, you can answer.
Yeah, I'm happy to answer from my perspective, and others can add their thoughts. So I was a witness in Sharar's case. I was on GPEX at the time that Sharar, in my understanding, my belief was that he was being discriminated against. I think there was very strong evidence that that was the case. I think that what actually the Green Party is doing something pretty astounding, and not necessarily what it would like to do, but it's actually going to be setting case law in the way that it's this is the first case that's coming that is really going to test the idea of whether the Equality Act can be upheld, as I believe it should be within political parties. So that will then impact on the outcomes of the rest of these cases. At the moment, the party believes that it can discriminate against gender critical beliefs. We know that that's morally wrong, and we also think that there's case law now to suggest that that's actually unlawful as well. But we're seeing a very specific case in Shirah's case. It's the first of its kind. I don't know if anyone else wants to add to that.
Only to say that it may help the party actually realise the desperate change it needs to make. I mean, if Shara wins, and I'm confident, I sat through the whole case, and anybody who sat in that courtroom and thought the party came out well out of that, you're living on a different planet. You really are. Read tribunal tweets, follow tribunal tweets. If you think the party showed itself to be a rational, reasonable kind of party in that courtroom, I'm afraid you're wrong. And I have a lot of faith that Shara could win. Now, if Shara does win and the party doesn't respond to that well, then we are really sunk. So I hope that the way that Shara's case will improve things is that the party and members, because it's members, it's members who the members that are with all the best intentions kind of going, let's just forget all about that and just concentrate on the climate. You can't carry on treating people like this and do that. So if Shara wins and the members take a good look at that and we can be honest about it, then that will hopefully improve the party, because it's not only this party that's going through this. The Labour Party and the Liberal Party are facing the same kind of thing. So if Shara wins and the party can be honest and all members can actually get involved and accept what's been happening, then that may well help the party move forward. And I hope the party can do that and members can see that.
Thank you, Emma. So someone's written really frustrated, saying they want to know when members of the panel think this will end. If we don't put a stop to the culture of misogyny in the Green Party and the damage it's already done to the fabric of the party. I think you've sort of answered that, Emma. We need the party to change track, really, don't we? Okay, this is a good one. Where is there a safe space within the Green Party to have open discussion about the differing opinions of sex versus gender, free from harassment and free from threat of disciplinary actions? I'd like to know too.
Short answer, I don't think there is one. I really don't. I think the Diverse Matters report was supposed to set up those kind of conversations, and I understand that things move slowly, but I am yet to see anything happening. Now, I've been out of the party for a long time, so there may be things happening that I'm not aware of, but I'm disappointed, let's say, with the pace of the change that needs to happen. But yeah, as of the moment, there is nowhere, I don't think, that people can have those conversations without being threatened with, or without having the threat of complaints hanging over them.
Thank you, Emma. Zoe, and then Dawn.
Yeah, I think that the closest we're getting to it is the Green Women's Declaration. There's a diverse range of views within Green Women's Declaration. We have different opinions, different ideas. We all disagree about gender and sex issues, but we all are united by the belief that women should have a right to advocate for their own interests. And that's really important. And so we are here doing that and making sure that we want to listen to all perspectives in order to, actually uphold the green values of the party that we thought we joined when we signed up to it as members a number of years ago.
I think there is no safe space. I think my cynical view is that there have been multiple attempts to create a safe space and they've all been sabotaged. This is not just something that has been done this year. It started in 2017. There was the listening circles, and there was a second batch of listening circles, and then there was a policy fest, and then there was the investigation into the policy and into the abuse of women that was done as like a I think it was about sort of 2 consultants that sort of came in and were interviewing people. I was selected to be on the waiting list to be interviewed, and then I was told that because I had been assaulted at conference, that my views would then be too strong for the participation in the listening circle. And my response to that is, actually, what the fuck? There should be a limit on physical violence against anyone in the party. And when you think about what was actually happening when that assault took place, I was handing out flyers at a conference to get the word sex put into the party policy because it was in breach of the Equality Act. This is what we're talking about here. And if that didn't register with the people to say, well, we need to talk about this issue, it never will. There was a specific point that was taken at the policy meeting in Newport, essentially in 3 months prior, in June 2019 at Scarborough, the chair of the LGBT Greens was given a draft of work to then set up intermediacy between conversations between the women's group and the LGBT Greens to come to some kind of consensus. Now, this was instilled by the chair of GPEX at the time, so it wasn't like a whimsical request. This was designated at the Scarborough conference that this was an actionable point. And what happened is when it was time for it to be delivered as to what happened to this discussion group, the person just said, oh, I forgot. And there was no further action taken, because the person can then turn around and say, well, you can't think badly of someone in the Green Party. And if someone forgot because they were a volunteer, even though they were the co-chair of the national special interest group who'd been assigned this at conference. And that's when you realize the fuckery that we're dealing with, that people will actually take these actions on board and pretend to pay lip service to it for the sake of presentation, but will actually be sabotaging all the way through. So there is no safe space, because that has been specifically the whole point, to not create a safe space. When I think back to the Newport conference, and we had the women's conference that was organised in the evening, we had to get a police escort for women coming from the train station to the venue because we had people threatening violence to us. This is insane. This is absolutely insane. So no, there is no safe space, but it's not through the lack of trying for the women. It's because it's been continually sabotaged by people. Thank you.
Thank you, Dawn. There's a very pointed question here. When male gender activists are given so much power and feminists so much abuse, is it fair to say the party is institutionally sexist? I'm getting nods from the panel and several members of the audience.
I don't think we even need to answer that. We get thumbs up from the committee, so.
Yeah, okay. And there's another one here. Why do you stay? This is to all the panel members. Surely leaving would be so much easier.
Yeah, leaving would be easier. It certainly would make my life easier. This is, like I say, I don't think this is how any of us really want to spend our time and effort and cash and everything else and emotional work that it takes. But why we stay? Well, because there's not really many other places to go in terms of politics. Like I said earlier, the Labour Party, the Liberal Party are in a similar kind of state. And I could say, what? I'm a sort of pessimistic optimist. I believe in climate change. I believe that it's real. It's happening. It is what we need to focus on. This, in a way, all of this is a distraction, but women's rights cannot be served, or if we don't protect women's rights, we can't do the wider environmental and social justice that the party likes to bang on about. Okay, that's my belief. So I stay because it's so important, because we need to get this women's rights sorted so we can get on with the really important climate change work. I truly believe that. And I also stay because I am not going to let the Green Party go to rack and ruin, to rack and ruin and to be taken over by a small faction who, some of whom I don't think, actually, no, I'm not going to question people's motivation. However, I don't think that all the hard work that Green Party members have put in, it's not fair to walk away from that. And there are so many good people in the Green Party. I really believe that there are so many good people, so many good policies, that we need to fight for it. And that's my answer.
Thank you, Emma. If it's all right, Zoe and Dawn, I'm going to move on to another question. I'm very glad all of you are staying and fighting, and I think I will speak for a large number of people in the audience as well. It's very important that this fight gets fought. That
Can I
people
just
speak.
Can I just very quickly add that we need everybody to stay? I know it can be really disheartening, and I just wanted to add, please don't leave. We need, and the sisterhood and the solidarity that I have gained through stepping up is so valuable, and I would encourage anybody else to kind of contact Green Women's Declaration if you are feeling desperate and contemplating leaving. We can help each other.
Thank you. That's really important, Zoe. Thank you for that. So a related question. So we know that women have spoken about leaving the party. Do we know how many women have actually left the party since these suspensions, expulsions have started? Do we have any idea of numbers? Do we undertake exit interviews of members? And do we have any information on that, if so?
My view is that we have no idea of the actual numbers. We only have exit interviews for senior governance positions such as GPEX and GPRC. And for instance, excuse me, when the spokesperson for Security and Defence, Dr. Rebecca Johnson, stood down, explicitly citing the bullying of women in a report to GPRC, that report was ignored spectacularly from a woman of her level of experience. Ex-Green and Common Nobel Peace Prize laureate, has worked with the defence and peace for the last 40 years. And she was absolutely dismissed by the party, which I feel was not just the attitude towards women, and particularly older women, by this party, which I find grossly offensive, but it was also that we've just got rid of another one. And I think that when we're talking about the numbers, we desperately need to find people, because I have many people who have contacted me through other colleagues, women who have sent emails to the membership complaining about how individuals have been spoken to at meetings or at conferences, how women have been badly treated, and then receiving an email that they are sorry they are leaving the party. They've suspended their membership because they've written an email asking about abusive behaviour to women without them even asking it. And these are only the people that we know of. So I think there are actually hundreds, if not thousands, of women and other members who have been quietly purged from the process because they've seen what's happened. They've seen what happens to women, particularly who speak out, and they have just walked away because they don't want the stress. And I think we actually need to find those members. We need to find the missing members of the Green Party, because we need to have them all hands on deck to fight the battle for climate change. And the fact that they have been purged, not even by their own leaving of the party, but by, factions who are sitting in the staff members or the membership department. This is absolutely outrageous. So please try and speak out about this and try and get other people, if they have left the party, to then either rejoin or at least make contact with the Green Women's Declaration, because we will give them a voice and we will give them a place to talk about green issues.
Yeah. Thank you for that. I just want to read out a message in the chat related to this. 5,000 members left the party last year. We don't know what their motivation was, and this is out of a total of about 52,000 members. So we're talking 10%.
Yeah.
That's huge.
That is huge. And I think there was a recent, the GPEX meeting this weekend. I think the new EEGI officer, Hamza, has some figures in there. And I think it was something like new members joining. I think 42% were women. 42% were women. Well, we're half the population, so why is it not 51%? And we're, I'm not being funny, but for political parties, I thought that the Green Party should attract more women. So it's not only the members that are leaving, and I know a lot of members personally have left because they used to contact Green Party women and say that they were leaving, but it's also the members that are not joining. If you look on Twitter, at our reputation, the reputation the Green Party is getting in certain circles is that, we're a misogynist party, that we don't care about women. So I know we're all in our little bubbles, and that might just be my bubble, but that's what I'm seeing a lot of. You wouldn't join the Green Party because of the misogyny, because they don't know what a woman is. Thanks.
Thank you, Emma. There's a question here about the group, the complaints group, the people who oversee the complaints within the party. Is there an annual report on categories and themes of complaints? Do they produce figures on protected characteristics of those complaining as well as those complained against? Surely this is important for monitoring fairness as well as for safeguarding reasons. And do they record the number of complaints made by a particular individual? And do they ever produce a report on any complaints found to be vexatious and malicious? And I'll just add my own question to that. Is there ever any action taken on time-wasting, vexatious and malicious complaints? Sorry, there's a lot of questions in there, but essentially it's about the complaints. Do we know? Do we have any data? Is there a report? Is there anywhere people can look up these things?
No. I'll let Emma go first, and then I'll add something if I may.
Okay, I'll just say every year at Autumn Conference, there's a report to conference, which is a disciplinary report. That lists basic numbers of complaints that are dealt with, and what the outcomes are. You are supposed to be able to read the minutes of the complaints committee and the minutes of the complaints referral group, but they are very rarely uploaded. The last set of minutes when I last looked was uploaded for March this year, I think. So they're not always uploaded. We asked, I think I asked in 2020 for complaints to be separated out, to be logged, what the complaint was about. And I think there have been attempts to put that in place, but I don't know how successful they've been. There has been a constant revision of the complaints process. And I want to say something about complaints. I think our complaint system is run by volunteers, right? I'm not here to say, oh, these are all terrible people. This is a system. People have their beliefs. A lot of people have been led to believe that certain things are legal that aren't, and certain things are illegal or against party policy that aren't. And I accept that many members who have a different point of view than I do are hardworking volunteers, but it doesn't take many that are so extreme in their thinking in a party with a culture that will quite easily get rid of certain members. It doesn't take a lot to tip the balance on that. So, but to come back to the question, yes, I hope now that the party is logging those factors, but I haven't seen any numbers on it, and I don't think there are actually numbers produced so far along those factors. But if you want to look at the complaints report, it is in the report to conference at Autumn. Thanks.
Thank you, Em. Zoe?
Yeah, I just want to say that this is a systemic problem. So whilst we may have reports, and the party is really great at writing reports, it's not great at change, and it's change that needs to happen. It needs to have happened yesterday. The next best time is today. It's not going to happen potentially for another number of years. It's because we can't make fundamental change without going to conference. We don't actually have within our systems, within our constitution, the ability to be flexible. So we've got the worst of both worlds. We're a small party that doesn't have the ability to be agile. Now, if you couple that with activists within positions of power within all of the central party bodies, then that means that there is an imbalance of power, and that there is a desire for there to be no change, because the current status quo benefits against those who support a particular ideology. And I think that's really one of the things that we're trying to highlight here, that it's a kind of a culture of harassment against gender critical views coupled with systemic failures. And it seems to be an unwillingness coupled with an inability to resolve those matters that gets us into this intractable situation. So just to reference, Pallavi, one of the things you said earlier is that, and I think we could all agree, yes, of course there should be a time limit to no-fault suspensions. How to actually effect that change by following the party's due process is a long and protracted problem. And if you don't do that, then you're actually undermining what the party has defined as its democratic processes. And if you do make the change, then you're kind of getting into a catch-22 situation. You might resolve one issue, but you're creating another one, because if we set a precedent for causing problems, then who's to say that we can't rewrite something else within the Constitution? And I think that is why people have taken a legal route, because it seems to be the only route that's available to people. I just wanted to highlight that.
Yeah, thank you for that. Someone commented that at the recent GPRC meeting, it was mentioned that complaints will now be handled outside of the party by an independent solicitor. Is that true? And if so, surely that means that we will then have to stay within the law in the way we handle complaints. Emma?
Yeah, I listened into that meeting, and I thought it was interesting that Mary Clegg said that. I think it's a good idea. I think it's a really good move. I hope it works. I really do. I think it's interesting that she wanted it to be confidential at first. Perhaps she has reasons for that. I don't know. But yes, I think it's great. I don't know what company they're going to be outsourced to, but I have high hopes for that. I think it will relieve the stress on the volunteers in the disciplinary committee as well. As I say, this really is a party of a lot of people trying to do their best. And I don't want to say I know that two disciplinary co-chairs have stood down fairly soon after they've gone through complaints by me. And I'm not saying it's all me, but this is stressful for the complainants and the people doing this work. So yeah, I really hope that's the thing. I really hope it happens quickly. Hope it deals with Alison's complaint and Debbie Fink, who we haven't spoken about tonight, who has also been put through the mill on complaints. If anyone knows Debbie, you'll know her situation. That's Debbie Fink, who's been through complaints for a couple of years. So yeah, let's hope it's a good thing and makes everything a lot better.
Can I add to that I agree that we need to be very careful about overloading volunteers. But to clarify, before I joined GPEX, I had the assumption that we were essentially a volunteer organisation that had a handful of professional members in London. That is not the case. We have nearly 60 full-time staff members with 1.5 million staff costs and £4 million turnover. We're not a small organisation. We are a professional organisation that has a substantial amount of, albeit less than 100 employees. And I think the problem is the party puts resources where it wants to be. It's not a fact that the disciplinary complaint system doesn't work. It absolutely does work, because the whole point is to remove people that are against the ideology of whoever's in particular charge. And I think this came out, particularly in Shiraz's court case, with who was put forward to represent the party and who was not put forward to represent the party and who was firewalled. I think we need to be very, very watchful about the party and thinking that, well, yes, people are volunteers and yes, they are being stressed, but they're also being stressed because the ideology that is being purported by the staff members and by the leadership is being done in such a way as to bully and to provocate members who are working as volunteers through the individual complaints process. And if that was removed, then it wouldn't necessarily matter that these people were volunteers. If they're being abused because of a particular position or because they're not towing a particular line, then again, that is going back to a systemic problem. And I believe that a lot of this is fundamentally because the party has been receiving advice from Stonewall in advice on what is and what is not the Equality Act and what is representative. Now, we didn't even know this on GPEX because this was essentially put in through the back door because it wasn't referenced in the accounts. It was listed as diversity training. And if we'd had known that we were paying, £1,500 a year since 2017 to an organisation which was, in my view, providing biased information as to the protections of the Equality Act, we could have countered that on GPEX. But we didn't know that it was there because it was put through in a line in the accounts and it wasn't challenged. Now, I think this is partly the fundamental problem of the entire party, is that the lack of transparency of the governance process, the lack of accountability to people who are making these decisions, and then posting that information in a place where it can be seen by members. I have direct experience of being on GPEX where important documents that were being discussed regarding legal cases back in 2020 were not being shared amongst the members because it would benefit individuals to hold on to that information and to not post them onto the Green Spaces website. All of this, if it had been a sane organisation, these people would have been removed through disciplinary action. But because they were the people who were running the disciplinary, then no action was taken, which is why it's in such a mess. So I disagree that it's because it's volunteers. I think the problem is the ideological principle and the fact that there are no grown-ups in the room and there's no oversight. Essentially, if we had been working as a political essentially in a governance position for the government, there would have been the civil service, there would have been an HR department. In essence, the entire complaints system is the HR department. It's self-regulating and self-appointing, which means it cannot work. It is not objective. So if we have a solicitor who is then overviewing and oversighting the complaints process, that will be fantastic because it means that at least they can't break the law when they're removing people from the party. So I hope it's a good thing. But what I suspect will happen is that it'll be then too expensive and then they'll stop doing it, because they'll realise that they can't actually purge members from the party, so it'll then be self-defeating against their own interests.
Thank you, Dawn. I'm conscious of the time. We're only 3 minutes away from close. There are more questions. There are lots of questions here. Some of them are really important as well, but we're not going to be able to do justice to them. I just want to bring Alison in. I've lost her from my screen, but Alison, can we just hear from you in the last couple minutes?
Okay. I think it's worth noting that the conference is largely unrepresentative and the policies that we have are decided by probably less than 5% of our membership. And I think this is one of the reasons that we've ended up in this serious situation where we have pretty much a faction fight that seems to be unresolvable. I think the two groups are mirrors of each other, and one side has very fierce beliefs. The other side that I see myself as being on is I see as being scientific, but even that is categorized as a belief in terms of the Equality Act, which seems a bit strange, but there we are. So I think that one of the important things that we need to do in the longer term is to have a delegate structure so that party policies are introduced at local level where they're discussed and debated thoroughly. And if there is consensus amongst a local party, it gets moved up to regional level where it is again debated and discussed. And if agreed upon, then becomes a motion that is presented to conference. And that if a delegate structure is implemented, therefore the delegate goes to the conference with voting. Everyone can attend conference, but only delegates have voting rights. And therefore, I think we'll end up with much stronger policies that have broad agreement amongst the membership, unlike now, where the majority of the membership perhaps don't even know a great deal about our policies and have certainly never had an opportunity to debate them. And I also think that having a delegate structure would greatly improve attendance at local meetings, because if people understood that their contributions were important and would build towards national policy, I think that would really inspire them to get involved.
I think that's an excellent idea, and I'm getting lots of nods and claps in the room. So yeah, fantastic. Thank you. I think we need to close now. We're nearly up for time. I just can't thank you all enough for attending. I know how big a deal it is to give up a couple of hours on a workday evening to come here. Thank you so much, because ultimately it's members that make this party. Please, please, please don't leave the party. We need you all to stay and to fight. This is our party. This is our planet. we made this, we built this party. It's ours as much as it is anybody else's. So please stay and let's do the right thing. The other thing I want to say is this is not confined to the Green Party. This what's happening is happening in wider society. It's happening in my son's school. What they're being taught about sex and gender at school actually worries me a lot. They're actually steering away from science. He was told in his class that there were people with periods. They were not called women, girls. It was made out to be this thing. So we're living in a society and a culture which is rather strange, actually. Something's happened, and part of me actually wonders if this is a huge conspiracy by the right wing to destroy the left liberal movement from within. I don't know. I honestly don't know. In one of my madder moments, I even wonder that, who knows? Who knows what the real truth is? But we are where we are. Personally, I think, regardless of anyone's belief, we should all be able to express it. We're not expressing hate views. Nobody that I have ever met within the Green Party has ever said anything against trans people, against their right to exist, to live, to have dignity, to be respected for who they are, to be supported. I've never heard such a view from anyone. So somehow there's a narrative is being created which is utterly false. And this is what we need to fight against. So let's stand up for respecting everyone and treating each other with dignity and allowing a space for diverse voices to be heard and to listen. Does anyone want to say anything else?
Can I just do a quick bit of housekeeping? First of all, to say on behalf of everybody, thank you so much, Pallavi. What a beautiful way that you've just wrapped up there for all of us. I think we can all completely align and agree with what you've just said. So thank you so much. Seeing applause from everybody. I know we haven't had a chance to answer all questions, so please do check the Green Women's Declaration website, where we will make sure that we attend to all the questions that we haven't had a chance to answer this evening. Yeah, that's everything.
And a final thanks to our panelists, the very brave women who are fighting this good fight. All support to you. See you all. Good night.